My mother attempted to force-feed me a cake that I am definitively allergic to at her 25th anniversary party. She is now regretting this action, as a result of the actions of my father-in-law, Phil. I married my husband Frank 27 months ago, approximately 1 year ago, after being in a relationship with him for 2 years. I have met his family on numerous occasions, and we all used to get along. Until recently, when he and I were visiting his parents, the conversation somehow turned to children. I casually mentioned that I was not interested in becoming a mother. My husband and I have obviously discussed this before, and both of us are on the same page about not wanting children. My mother, in conclusion, it is evident that my mother-in-law has a strong desire to have children. My mother-in-law, Sharon, 52, was the one who initiated the conversation at dinner that day. When my husband and I made it known that we were not planning on having children, she attempted to change our minds, particularly mine. She continued to try and convince me to have children at some point over the next couple of days. I informed her that I was not interested and that my husband shared this sentiment. This was the end of the discussion. I made it clear that I had boundaries and that I would not engage further. After this, she became cold towards me and behaved inappropriately whenever I visited my father-in-law. In conclusion, it is evident that the aforementioned individual exhibited a lack of emotional maturity and a tendency to act inappropriately. Ben, 53 months of age, appeared indifferent to the situation, which was a source of relief. I did discuss Sharon's behavior with Frank, but he informed me that she was merely upset and would eventually return to a more positive state of mind. He asserted that it was not her place to dictate whether or not we should have children, and that her emotional distress was not a valid argument for changing our decision. After discussing the matter with Frank, I felt somewhat reassured. Given that we still had to continue visiting his parents because Ben was not well, I endeavored to maintain a cordial and polite demeanor towards Sharon, despite her apparent lack of reciprocation. A few days prior, we had attended the 25th wedding anniversary celebration, which had been organized by Frank's older brother, a surgeon. He was able to arrange a lavish and opulent affair, inviting nearly all of our acquaintances, including my parents. We all enjoyed the festivities, despite Sharon's apparent disinterest. I was particularly disconcerted by this development and proceeded to engage in festivities with my spouse and my parents. At the conclusion of these activities, it was finally time to cut the cake. I was aware that I would be unable to participate in this customary ritual due to my severe allergy to peanuts and other nuts. The cake in question was a chocolate peanut butter cake, which I perceived to be a rather peculiar choice. It was a fitting representation of Sharon's personality, as I subsequently reflected. She assisted in cutting the cake along with Ben, and we all applauded. This was a moment of great significance, and then we proceeded to serve the cake to all in attendance. Despite my apparent lack of interest in the cake, I did not decline it outright. However, upon noticing my apparent allergy, Sharon made a fuss about approaching me and offering me a slice. I politely declined, and I found it peculiar that she was even offering me a piece, given her awareness of my allergy. On numerous occasions, I was urged to take a bite of the cake, despite my repeated refusals and assertions that I was allergic. The woman attempted to persuade me to take just a small portion, claiming that it would not cause any harm. However, I was reluctant to risk it after a prolonged debate. She then exclaimed, "Just take a bite," before thrusting the cake into my mouth. I immediately spat it out and had to retrieve a tissue from Frank to clear my mouth. The remnants of the substance in question were expelled from my mouth almost immediately, eliciting a visceral reaction of disgust. I was compelled to rinse my mouth in order to remove the offending matter. Frank then proceeded to berate his mother, who had just committed this reprehensible act, for approximately half a minute. Once I had recovered from the initial shock, I returned to the conversation with Sharon and expressed my displeasure. I informed her that her actions were not only reprehensible but also indicative of a severe mental illness. I made it clear that I would never return to this place again, as I found her behavior to be utterly unacceptable. Furthermore, I made it clear that my decision to remain childless was not a reflection of my personal values but rather a conscious choice. She informed me that she would treat me as she saw fit, and I was prepared to accept that. I was not concerned with her opinion on whether I should have a child or not. What mattered was my opinion and Frank's opinion, and attempting to provoke an allergy reaction simply because I was not going to provide her with grandchildren was textbook psychotic behavior. I was aware of the underlying motive behind her actions and wished to convey to her that I was not intimidated by her in the least. She attempted to defend herself, but she asserted that she was unaware of the severity of my allergies. This was a falsehood, as she had known me for almost 3 years and had prepared numerous meals for me. She was aware that I was allergic to various nuts. I was skeptical of her claim and accused her of lying. She became enraged and accused me of being untruthful, claiming that she did not believe me about the allergies or about the fact that her son. He was unwilling to have children because he was aware that she desired to become a grandmother and that he would never deny her that joy. She accused me of faking my allergies for attention and asserted that I was not willing to have children and had alienated her son against the idea as well, solely because I might be infertile. This incident ultimately provoked me to the point of violence, so I seized a piece of cake from Frank's plate and threw it at her face. I then departed without waiting for a response. For those who may be unaware, I was the victim of a carjacking. Fortunately, Frank was just behind me, and my parents were also in the vehicle. They were able to exit without incident. I dropped my parents off at their residence, and then Frank and I proceeded to my residence. The entire journey was conducted in complete silence. Even after we arrived home, we did not speak to each other for approximately an hour. It is likely that Frank was waiting for me to calm down before he approached me. In the evening, he prepared coffee for me and we finally sat together in the living room. I initiated a discussion about the events that transpired at the party. I expressed my regret for my actions, despite the fact that I was not at fault. However, I still felt embarrassed by my conduct. He informed me that it was not my responsibility and that I should not be ashamed. He then proceeded to inform me that the individuals who remained at the party provided him with the details of what transpired after we departed. It was revealed that Sharon began to cry after Frank departed and chose to follow me instead of remaining to console her. She was portraying herself as a victim, and her family was enthusiastically embracing this role, hurling the most disparaging insults at me and accusing me of attempting to separate Frank away from her. The only individual who challenged her narrative was Ben, a surprising development given his typical avoidance of family conflicts, particularly those involving his wife. However, this time he stood up for us, informing Sharon that she was solely responsible for Frank's departure because she had consistently exhibited controlling behaviors. Whenever someone attempted to implement a course of action that did not align with her plans, she would become enraged and engage in a heated argument with them. The other individuals present would remain silent, awaiting the conclusion of the dispute. Sharon accused him of prioritizing me over her and deemed his actions unreasonable. However, Ben remained unwavering in his stance and refused to concede. They continued to argue until Frank's older brother intervened and separated them. The day was ultimately marred by this altercation, and the group departed for home. I recorded the altercation, and it was encouraging to witness Ben defending our position. He and a few other relatives are currently our most reliable allies. Frank's brother believes that I should apologize because he feels that I overreacted and that I should not have brought up my personal grievances against Sharon on the anniversary of their marriage. He believes that I should have focused on the situation at hand and not made it about myself and my personal issues. However, Sharon's family shares this sentiment and is demanding an apology from me because the fight was not even. The issue at hand is not whether or not we should have children. Rather, the focus is on the fact that my relatives believe I should not have initiated the topic of children in the first place. They maintain that I should have simply walked out after being offended by Sharon's attempts to force me to eat cake. They further contend that I am responsible for Ben and Sharon's subsequent fight. Had I simply walked away, they assert, the fight would not have occurred. Frank, also my brother, asserted that I was not going to apologize because I was not at fault. However, it seems that the majority of the family believes that I am responsible for ruining Sharon's anniversary party and causing the fight between B and Sharon on their anniversary. They have informed me that the two of them are currently estranged, with Sharon having packed her belongings and moved in with a friend following their significant disagreement. It is notable that Ben has not attempted to contact her since the incident. In conclusion, on the day of her anniversary, I attempted to force-feed her cake. I would like to thank Frank for all of the comments. I am grateful for the support and the overwhelming number of people who commented to tell us that we are not at fault. I did feel somewhat responsible when I learned that Ben and Sharon were not even on speaking terms after they fought. However, after reading the comments, I realized that this was not my fault. Sharon is responsible for the unfortunate turn of events. She attempted to make her own party about me, when it should have been about her and her husband. She made a cake that she knew I was allergic to, for no apparent reason. When the situation escalated, she resorted to crying and playing the victim, as if I were the one trying to trigger an allergic reaction. I had previously indicated that I would not be providing her with grandchildren. Furthermore, I do not believe that I am in any way indebted to her for this. It is evident that she has caused significant damage to her own party. I do not believe that I am in any way obliged to provide an apology or to offer her grandchildren. It has been several days since the incident occurred, and Frank's brother and a few other relatives have been contacting him almost daily to provide updates on Sharon's condition. These updates serve to remind him of Sharon's unhappiness and to suggest that he is responsible for her distress. He has not responded to any of these messages and has not provided any indication of his feelings on the matter. His relatives have been contacting him on a near-daily basis to provide him with updates on Sharon's well-being, which often serve as a reminder of her unhappiness. This, in turn, suggests that we may be the cause of her distress. He has not responded to any of these messages, and he has chosen to ignore the messages, yet he has not blocked the senders. He believes that Sharon may become unstable and that he would want updates in case the situation becomes too intense for them to handle. Meanwhile, Ben has been doing well. We recently visited his residence to inquire about his well-being. He indicated that he had not spoken to Sharon for an extended period, despite recognizing that she had become overly demanding. He attempted to dissuade her from her actions on numerous occasions, both in person and via written communication. Despite his efforts, she remained unresponsive. Upon witnessing her emotional distress at a social gathering following our departure, he was unable to contain his frustration. He perceived her actions as a manipulative attempt to elicit sympathy, and he was compelled to confront her with the truth. As expected, she was unable to accept the reality of the situation and chose to end the interaction. He informed us that he anticipates her expectation for him to initiate contact and express remorse. The individual in question exhibited a certain behavior, but he has since ceased to engage in such conduct. He has stated that he is too advanced in age to consistently express remorse for espousing his opinions. If, after a period of 25 years of marriage, the other party is unable to cope with such behavior, it is likely that the marriage is not sustainable. Following the previous update, a few developments occurred. Firstly, Sharon sought to gain an understanding of the reasons behind Frank's decision to visit Ben, rather than her. It is possible that the neighbors may have witnessed this occurrence and informed the relevant authorities. Frank informed Sharon that the conflict was, in fact, her fault. He reasoned that his father would require his assistance more than she would because she was merely seeking sympathy. We can now discern that her actions were insincere. She became offended by his observation and engaged in a heated argument via telephone. For reasons unknown, she began to accuse him of attempting to turn her father against her. She asserted that she was unable to effectively handle the situation and that she was aware of her shortcomings. Even when Frank attempted to clarify that he was not responsible for the conflict and that his opinions were merely his own, she remained adamant. I heard this and insisted that this was all my fault. The woman in question has it in for me, it seems, just because I don't want to have children. I would venture to say that this is the most ridiculous reason I can think of to hate somebody. I informed Frank that I didn't want to talk to her anymore and that if she called again, he should not entertain it. He agreed, stating that there is no point in trying to reason with her, as she is beyond that. The second thing that happened was that we visited Ben at his house yesterday in the evening. For the first time, he offered us drinks. He typically abstains from alcohol consumption due to health concerns. Yesterday, we were uncertain about the wisdom of his decision. However, he was adamant about it. He informed us that he had consulted with a lawyer and was contemplating a divorce. This is a significant transition after 25 years of marriage. We inquired if he was certain about this course of action. However, he seemed indifferent and even seemed unperturbed. Frank was visibly affected by this news and needed time to process it. Ben reassured him that this was the optimal decision under the circumstances. He asserted that we have been considering this for some time, as he was not content and Sharon was becoming increasingly irksome to be around when we inquired as to the length of time he had been contemplating a divorce. We anticipated that he would say that he had been considering it for approximately 1 or 2 months, but he was quite taken aback and informed us that he had been pondering this for almost 10 years. He informed us that when Frank was 20 and was about to graduate from college, Ben believed that, now that Frank was an adult and could manage his life and his finances, he could join his brother in a new business venture. The two had been discussing the matter for some time, but Ben had been unable to make a commitment due to his familial responsibilities and the financial obligations he bore. He was unable to simply abandon his employment and embark on a new business venture, which would require a period of stability. However, following Frank's graduation, Ben informed his brother that he was prepared to take the plunge. While discussing the matter with Sharon, she dissuaded him from doing so, prompting him to reconsider. He stated that he was uncertain as to whether the business would be a success, and Frank had not yet obtained employment. Consequently, he would require financial resources for a period of approximately 2 years before he could establish a stable income. He attempted to persuade her, suggesting that he might be able to work in the business on a part-time basis while retaining his current position. However, she rejected this proposal, and now his brother, who operates the business independently, earns approximately 3 times the amount that he does. They have maintained contact and there is no day that goes by without communication. Ben did not regret listening to Sharon's advice. She had not attempted to engage in a conversation with him, but had presented him with an ultimatum: if he accepted his brother's offer, she would take Frank and leave him. This forced him to abandon the idea of his brother. Despite his continued desire for Ben to join him, Ben believes that he is too old to make the change and that he will retire in a couple of years anyway, rendering the venture unfeasible. Frank was visibly distressed by his father's despondent tone while discussing. Frank felt that he had missed out on opportunities because he had listened to Sharon, who had not been willing to bet on his brilliant mind. In fact, Frank considered Sharon to be one of the wisest and most intellectual people he knew. Frank had known that if Ben was willing to invest in something, it was a good idea. This was borne out by Frank's brother, who had worked on the business idea that Ben had created and was now a successful businessman. Frank suggested that Ben take up the position that his brother was going to offer him, even if it was just a couple of years remain before his retirement. At the end of the day, he would have the satisfaction of knowing that he tried. He argued that it was too late for him and said that the position was not a problem because his brother was ready to make him a partner in the firm. However, he was just not interested. We were upset to hear him talk like that. Frank and I decided that we were going to talk some sense into him. We kept convincing him that he should talk to his brother and join him. It was evident that attempting to persuade him to take action was futile. Despite the somewhat didactic tone of our discourse, we eventually succeeded in persuading him to at least initiate communication with his brother regarding this matter. This was a positive outcome, as it signified a willingness to engage in constructive dialogue. With regard to the divorce, we are committed to providing him with emotional support. It is imperative to recognize that Sharon's actions have a significant impact on those around her. Her behavior towards Ben was unjust, as was her recent conduct towards Frank. It is crucial for her to acknowledge this and to learn from her mistakes. The realization that she cannot simply exert her authority and compel others to comply with her demands is the key to understanding why Ben was so distressed when she attempted to humiliate him at the party. Our refusal to obey her directives was the primary cause of his distress. Despite this, she persists in portraying herself as the victim in this situation. I no longer feel any sympathy for her because she has demonstrated that she does not deserve any sympathy from anyone. Those who support her delusions of being a long-suffering victim are either foolish or motivated by a desire for drama. Those who identify as victims in this situation are likely to be either misguided or motivated by a desire for drama. Update 3: Ben and his lawyer filed the petition today, and Frank was present. He informed me that Ben was relieved and that they proceeded to consume celebratory beverages. I am currently engaged in a significant amount of work, so I was unable to join them. However, I am pleased to learn that he has finally begun to live for himself. The gentleman in question is in his 50s. He is entitled to pursue a course of action that brings him happiness, rather than allowing his wife's opinions or his son's feelings to influence his decisions. This is a further reason why I have chosen not to have children, as I do not believe I possess sufficient selflessness to prioritize the needs of others at the expense of my own. I do not believe Frank is capable of such selflessness either. There are also individuals like Sharon who are selfish, yet still some individuals choose to have children solely to exert control over them and prioritize their own needs over those of their offspring. It has been a few days since we last heard from her, so it seems plausible that she is attempting to portray herself as the victim. Alternatively, she may be planning a dramatic and theatrical comeback, given her penchant for such displays. I cannot entirely discount the possibility of this latter scenario. However, I hope that whatever she has in store is not. It is anticipated that this will occur before she is served with the divorce papers. It would be unseemly if she were to return and Ben were to inform her that he is seeking a divorce. Frank and I have discussed the possibility of this occurring, and we are aware that she will react in an uncooperative manner regardless. However, the situation would be more challenging if should she choose to do so in person. I am merely hoping that she will refrain from doing so for a few more days. Update 4. As previously stated, Sharon was served with a divorce decree a few days ago. Interestingly, she was not upset with Ben, but rather with me. I had not anticipated this outcome. It was evident that this was a possibility, given that I did not believe there was any way she could make this about me, given that it was between her and her husband. However, I appear to have underestimated her, as she proceeded to make a post online about how I had manipulated Ben into leaving her as soon as she was served. We were likely to celebrate my victory and her defeat. I was not competing with her, so I am uncertain about the rationale behind the notion of winning or losing. It is concerning to consider that she viewed me as a competitor, given that she is considerably older than me and is, in fact, my mother. I would like to take this opportunity to clarify the following point. It is curious that she did not consult with Frank or Ben before posting. The text comprises 3 paragraphs in which the author asserts that she is being harmed by the other party's actions, which have led to the alienation of her loved ones. However, in the final paragraph, she acknowledges that the other 2 individuals have also been deceived and manipulated. It is noteworthy that her entire life has become intertwined with the other party, which is perceived as somewhat disturbing. Frank has also blocked her, as has the author. Nevertheless, her relatives continue to contact the author. Tell me how evil I am. It is unfortunate that they believe it bothers me, but it only serves to amuse me how foolish they are being. Even if I were a master manipulator, I could not persuade someone to leave their wife unless they truly desired to do so. I am not suggesting that I am above such actions, but it is important to recognize that people as foolish as those in question are forgetting that the blame is being placed on me and that I am being painted as the villain. Ben has apologized for his role in this, even though he has no reason to apologize to me. The fault lies with his soon-to-be ex-wife. I acknowledge that my husband is attempting to be cordial, as not many individuals possess his particular disposition, particularly within the context of my in-laws. Nevertheless, a divorce is inevitable, and attempting to shift the blame onto me is futile. Accepting the situation is the optimal course of action for her, as it will not alter the inevitable. Frank and I are content regardless, so if she is unhappy as a result, it is her prerogative to bear that burden.